Hi, and welcome to another edition of Jules Voto's Photo Focus. Now, in a previous video, I shot images with my Nikon 135 1.8 lens at 1.8 of mostly flowers. And in that video, I stated that I would like to shoot that lens at 1.8 for street type photography, walk around photography, just of general subjects, whatever you come upon. So this is that video. And normally, if I was doing street photography, and I've done videos on street photography before, I'm using either a 28mm manual focus lens or a 35 or a 50 or possibly, a 24 to 70 zoom. And I also did a video using a 70 to 200 2.8, which is a very heavy lens. So I'll put a link in the description below to some of those videos. But I thought, why not use this 135? But why? So one of the reasons, I paid a lot of money for this lens. So I need to justify my expense. Now I use it for portraits and it's great, but I feel like I need to shoot more with this lens. So that's one of the reasons. The other reason is I just love it at 1.8. I love the way it renders subjects at 1.8, whether it be a portrait or a flower or anything else for that matter. So, that's a reason. And another reason is I think when you use a lens that you haven't used in a certain situation, a 135 for street type photography, it lets you see things differently. You're looking through that lens on the camera, especially wide open, and you're going to see things differently. You may get some more creative images. So that's what I did. So why don't we go look at some of those images? Okay, so all these images you're going to see were shot at 1.8 with the 135 1.8 on my Nikon Z8 in Biloxi, Mississippi. We've been there several times and I've done several videos there. I like it because the hotel we stay at is very close to where all these shrimp boats are docked. And one of the first morning we were there, I saw this gentleman paddling away, and I thought it was kind of cool. And here's one of the shrimp boats. I have photographed these boats before, but never with a 135 at 1.8. I've used my 24 to 200, my 70 to 200, my 24 to 70, but I thought I would get something different with this lens. Now, in 2005, Biloxi was hit pretty bad by Katrina, and there are some artifacts on display outdoors behind some glass, and this was a clock that was obviously destroyed by Katrina. And here's a shot going down the street of a fire hydrant at a little bit of distance at 1.8. Then I came in close, and you could see that the background is totally gone, and that is one of the things that I really love about this lens, how you could just completely blow out the background. Now here's a little cafe with some outdoor seating that I have photographed several times before, but again, never at 1.8, never with the 135. So I just focus on this table here in the foreground, and you can see how soft the background goes, but I kind of like it. And then I went around to the other side, looking back the other way, opposite where that previous picture was taken, and we got this view of another table. So no, these are not award-winning photographs, but the 135 gives me the ability to just see things a little bit differently. And the same thing here, City Hall, which I photographed many times. I just like these arches, and again, this was shot, as all these images were, at 1.8. This was a bank about a block or so from the City Hall, which I have photographed before. And, it just enables you to see things a little differently, to get some unique images. And that 1.8 aperture allows you to really blow out the background. And here's that bank again, which if anybody have seen any of my videos, and I'm going to put a link to a few of them in the description below. You've seen this bank before, but never at 1.8. And here's a few trees. The last time I was there, these trees were not in bloom. This time they were in June. And then just, walking around the street, you see a lot of things. And this was a dress shop, and there were some mannequins in the window. So, I thought I'd try a few images of these. And again, you're getting a lot of reflection. And at 1.8, it's very soft, but it's kind of like dreamlike, I think. And again, I just want to reiterate here, I don't think any of these are, fantastic images, but walking around with a camera is it kind you can think of nothing else but trying to find something to photograph. Here's another thing I photographed many times before, and I just feel again walking around with a camera is very relaxing, and it takes your mind away from everything else. Now here's a new photograph that I never photographed this before. These vehicles belong to that restaurant in the previous image you saw, that Bella, and I thought they were pretty cool. And again, right near where that restaurant is, were some planters on the outside of this window. And here we are from a different angle looking back, and you could see the other planters are, completely out of focus. So I think using a lens you have never used before in a situation you have never used it in before. And here we have, a portrait lens primarily. It's considered a portrait lens, right? But I'm photographing things on the street, a house, or a planter, or some boats, or a flag, and it just enables things to look differently. I'm older now. I been photographing for over 50 years, and I feel I was a lot more creative when I was younger. But using a lens like this, I think allows me to be more creative. And here we have a gentleman fishing, and you could see the water and the sky is completely out, but it really isolates the fisherman. So here's a shot looking towards, there's a lighthouse on the street in Biloxi, and here's a distant shot of that lighthouse. And, a thing shooting 1.8 at a subject in the distance, you get a lot of depth of field at great distance. So you can use it for distant shots and having mostly everything at a distance in focus. So here was looking down to the water. I just wanted to try a lot of different things at 1.8 with this lens just to see what I could get. And I'm pleased with the images. I really like this one, which I have photographed this before. The last time we were in Biloxi, it was a foggy day and it looked totally different. So that's another thing. Photograph things in different lighting conditions. Photograph them in the morning, photograph them late in the day, near sunset, what they call the golden hour, either in the early or late. These images were shot between 7 and 9 a.m. and over the course of several days, some earlier, some later. And some of them were cropped. Now, this gentleman, is a homeless veteran who I felt really bad for. I was walking by him. He started to talk to me, and I asked him if I could take a few pictures of him, and he obliged. And he gave me his whole story. I'm not going to get into it here, but it shouldn't be that people who served our country are left homeless. Something should be provided for these people. And unfortunately for this gentleman, it was not. He was in a wheelchair. So this is Fred Hayes, a statue of Fred Hayes, who is from Biloxi. He was an astronaut on Apollo 13. And I just got a few shots of his seagull on Fred's statue.
And I photographed this before in the fog, actually, last time we were there. And this is a close-up shot of the door to that lighthouse. And I just kind of like the shadow. And again, the 1.8 really throws that background out of focus. And here's a few more fishermen. I really love the color with this lens, the way it renders. And I think Nikon lenses are pretty consistent in their color. Um, and of course, it has a lot to do with your picture control. I use the standard picture control for all these images. And you can see how I didn't dial up saturation or anything. This is just the standard picture control on the Nikon Z8. And here are these weeds, I don't know what they are kind of separated from the others in the background. And as I've said before, and those who've seen my videos know, I like photographing houses and architecture. And here I kind of just like the colors with the blue awning and the yellow facade. Here's another shot from across the street of that lighthouse, shooting through the tree. And no ability to zoom, obviously, with the 135. I had to use my feet to zoom, and here's a crepe myrtle with the lighthouse completely thrown out of focus in the background. And again, another one of the best things about that lens is that 1.8 aperture. This gentleman was reading on the porch of a building, and I just kind of shot through the railing, and then autofocus nailed it right on his face. It wasn't distracted by the railing. And here's that gentleman again as I was walking back on the other side of the street, and he was still out there. He told me he was waiting for someone. And again, it's unfortunate that someone who served our country, he told me he was in Desert Storm, has to live like that. And this was another gentleman on the way back, another homeless gentleman who was happy to pose for me. And he gave me the peace sign, and I just focused on his fingers. So even though it was heavy, I enjoyed using this lens for my walk around Biloxi. And again, these were done over the course of 3 days. And I highly recommend try something different. This woman was waiting for a bus, I believe, but try something different. Use a lens you've never used in a situation before. Use it at an aperture you normally wouldn't use it at. And it will help you to see things that you may not have noticed before. And it will give you images kind of unique to what you normally do. If I had used my 24-70 for a lot of these images, they would look different. I wouldn't have shot, I wouldn't have had the ability to shoot at 1.8, so there would have been more depth of field. So just experiment, and you will be surprised to see what you may be able to find.
Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think. I always appreciate your comments, questions, criticisms. I'd like to hear from you, and I try to respond to all comments. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I publish a new video every Monday morning and Wednesday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. So I will talk to you next time.